When we read the Bible, we are often reminded that, in His providence, God uses unexpected men and women to accomplish great things for His people. Who hasn't heard stories like Joseph in Egypt, Deborah, David, and many others? However, some of these people used by God throughout history remain overlooked in the Bible's pages by most readers. In this video, we'll talk about a nearly forgotten biblical character that many have never heard of and don't even realize is mentioned in the Bible. He is referenced very briefly, and when I say briefly, I mean it. Only 2 verses mention him. However, this brief biblical account records something extraordinary. This man defeated 600 Philistines with nothing but a farmer's tool, freeing Israel. Some people even confuse this character's story with that of Samson, but they were not contemporaries and had nothing to do with each other, aside from the fact that both were judges of Israel. If you're still unsure who this person was, we're talking about Shamgar, the 3rd judge of Israel. I'd like to mention that this video is based on the biblical text from Judges 3:31 and Judges 5:6. To understand Shamgar's story, we need to know more about the historical period in which he lived. Shamgar lived during the time of the Judges, a period of great instability and disorder in Israel's history. This time began after Joshua's death and preceded the rise of the Israelite monarchy. In Judges 21:25, we read a phrase that sums up the situation of that time. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This verse reveals the lack of central leadership and unity among the tribes of Israel, leading to repeated cycles of apostasy, oppression, repentance, and deliverance. In fact, the cycle of Israel in the book of Judges follows a clear pattern. The people strayed from God and fell into idolatry. God allowed enemies to oppress them as judgment. The people cried out to God in repentance, and God raised up a judge, a leader, to deliver them from oppression. The book of Judges describes how the Israelites chose new gods, and then war came to their city gates. The fact that God raised up unlikely judges like Deborah, Gideon, and Shamgar was an expression of His grace amid chaos and His sovereignty in using unexpected means to fulfill His will. The Bible tells us that Shamgar's great battle was against the Philistines. The Philistines were frequent enemies of Israel in Old Testament times, especially during the period of the Judges and up until David's reign. They were a warrior people, technologically advanced, known for their use of iron in weapons, which gave them a military advantage over Israel. The Philistines lived along the coastal regions of Canaan and frequently raided, attacked, and oppressed the Israelite tribes. The Philistine oppression during Shamgar's time can be seen as part of the ongoing conflict between the Israelites and their pagan neighbors. The lack of unity among the Israelite tribes only worsened the situation, as each tribe tried to survive on its own with minimal cooperation, allowing the Philistines and other enemies to exploit the people's vulnerability. In this context, God raised up Shamgar as a judge over the Israelites, a unique judge in a tumultuous time. Although little is known about Shamgar, it seems he was an unconventional judge, unlike others such as Gideon, Samson, or Deborah. The Bible does not mention that Shamgar was directly called by God or that he received specific instructions to deliver Israel. Perhaps this did happen, but the Bible does not record it. He is mentioned briefly, without many details about his life. Yet his role as Israel's deliverer raises various questions about his background and context. The main information about him is summarized in this verse. After him came Shamgar, son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad, and he too saved Israel. The name Shamgar has an uncertain etymology. Some scholars suggest that it could derive from a Hurrian personal name found in ancient texts from Nuzi, a Mesopotamian city. However, the consensus is that the name Shamgar is not of Israelite origin, which may indicate that he was not a Hebrew by birth. The identification of Shamgar as the son of Anath does not necessarily refer to his father's lineage, as many biblical names suggest, but could point to his geographical origin. Some scholars believe he might have come from a town called Bainat, located in the territory of the tribe of Naphtali. This city was subdued by the men of Naphtali, but its inhabitants were not completely expelled. Another possibility is that he hailed from a village near Hebron, mentioned in Joshua 15:59. Since the biblical text does not definitively state Shamgar's ethnic origin or tribal affiliation, some scholars propose that Shamgar may have been a Canaanite who, in some way, became part of Israel's service. This hypothesis is supported by those who observe that the name Anath might be related to the Canaanite goddess of war, worshipped in Ugarit and Egypt. However, this theory faces challenges, especially since it would be unusual for a judge and deliverer of Israel to be associated with a pagan deity. It is possible, however, that the nickname Son of Anath was given by the Canaanites themselves, or even by syncretistic Israelites, because of his reputation as a warrior, meaning something like son of battle. Another plausible theory suggests that the title Son of Anath might not be a personal name or a place designation, but rather a military title. Egyptian and Canaanite evidence indicates that Son of Anath could have been the name of a military unit Shamgar belonged to, suggesting he was a mercenary soldier. Regardless of his exact origins, what we do know is that Shamgar lived in a time of great oppression and insecurity. In Deborah's song in Judges 5, we read that during Shamgar's time, the roads were dangerous, travelers were ambushed by raiders, and many villages were abandoned as people sought refuge in fortified cities. This atmosphere of fear and violence reflected the pressure from the Philistines, who, even in the early stages of their presence in Israel, were already disrupting trade and travel routes. The text suggests that Shamgar faced an organized and dangerous enemy, but even so, he took courageous and unexpected action. Using an ox goad, a simple farming tool with an iron tip, he killed 600 Philistines in a successful attack. There are alternative theories about what the ox goad might represent. Some scholars speculate that this term could have been symbolic or even the name of a ship, suggesting Shamgar might have been a naval commander who led an offensive against the Philistines, possibly in alliance with Ramses II. However, this theory lacks clear evidence and contradicts the simpler biblical description of Shamgar as a man who fought on land using a farming tool. Another point of debate is the duration of Shamgar's leadership. Unlike well-known judges such as Gideon or Deborah, who delivered Israel in a more lasting way, Shamgar's role seems to have been short-lived. The continued oppression of Israel's tribes until the time of Deborah and Barak leads some interpreters to believe Shamgar's leadership was limited. However, his battle might have paved the way for later victories by the tribe of Naphtali against the Canaanites. Despite the possibility that Shamgar was of foreign origin, since there is a chance he was not an Israelite, he was still used by God to deliver Israel, even if only for a short time. What matters in the biblical account is not Shamgar's ethnicity or the complexities surrounding his title, but the fact that God, in his sovereignty, raised him as an unlikely instrument to bring deliverance to his people. Whether Shamgar was a simple farmer or a skilled warrior, the Bible's focus is not on his military prowess, but on God's power, which enabled him to achieve victory. Shamgar's ox goad became a powerful weapon in his hands because it was used under divine direction. One might even ask, what motivated Shamgar to face 600 armed men with just an ox goad? The answer lies in his dependence on God. Such boldness and willingness do not come from self-confidence, but from absolute trust in God. Self-confidence and confidence in God are entirely different. Whether Shamgar was a simple farmer or a mercenary soldier, the key point is that he knew that on his own, he could not defeat 600 Philistine enemies. But Shamgar did not focus on his limitations. He trusted in God's power to deliver his people.
Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, share, and watch this next video. See you next time.